trust me. But now it's different. She's gone to the country asking for her own mandate, and there is just such a lot we still don't know. This morning, in her first major television interview of the campaign, the Conservative leader, Theresa May. The words strong and stable won't, I'm sure, pass her lips once.
This is, again, it underlines a deceitful premise to this whole general election, because Theresa May has argued that the more people vote for her, the more seats she gets, the stronger her mandate to go to the EU. The EU don't care how many votes she gets. They don't care how many seats they have. And I think there is a sense of denial, which the Conservative government is promoting, which is that we are going to have a strengthened negotiating hand when we're up against a whole range of EU states who have no, why would they care about the election?
No logic.
We'll find out shortly, but that was one of the questions that the Mail on Sunday put to her in her first newspaper interview, Ern.
Well, good luck with your interview, because the Mail have got absolutely nothing. It is insulting, I have to say, to call a general election and have nothing of any substance to say on any domestic issue. If you read, look, it's quite interesting. It talks about going to church, very nice. No hard Brexit or soft Brexit, cliches. I think the problem is, it's kind of twofold. What you're going to end up with is a situation, can I guess how the interview is going to pan out? Basically, Linton Crosby has implanted implants into people's Tory MPs'
We're very
brains.
much hoping that people will carry on watching. Well, that's what I would say.
And I'm saying what she will do is she will avoid saying anything of substance and stick to lines which she's going to repeat over and over again until people's ears bleed. The other point, though, is why would anyone trust a single word that she says? She came into your studio over and over again and said that there would, and other studios saying there would be no snap election. There was. The premise she gave for giving one was that she was being obstructed in terms of Brexit in the Houses of Parliament. That's a straightforward untruth, overwhelmingly got through the House of Commons. National insurance, do you remember that? A Tory manifesto commitment, she went back on it. You can't
Not surprisingly, you don't think you can trust her.
But you can't trust, whatever policies or pledges she comes up with this election, you can't trust a word that this woman says.
And now I am joined live in the studio by the Prime Minister, Theresa May. Good morning, Prime Minister.
Good morning, Andrew.
Can we agree, to start with, that the one thing that voters deserve in what you yourself have said is going to be a very, very important election is no sound bites?
Well, it is absolutely crucial, because this is, I think, the most important election that this country has faced in my lifetime, that when people look at this election and when they hear what the politicians are saying, they think about the national interest. That should be what drives people when they go to vote.
But no slogans. We can agree for the next 23
minutes. Come on, Andrew. You know that we will all be talking, as we go through this election, every party will be talking about what they think is important. I'll be talking about
strong and stable leadership.
Well, I'll be talking, and there's a reason for talking about strong and stable leadership and having a strong and stable government. It's precisely because this is the most important election the country has faced in my lifetime. It's about the future of the country. It's about the national interest.
It's just that people can listen to that kind of thing and think it's a bit robotic.
No,
Out a specific example. Lots and lots of young people do a job that I wouldn't do and perhaps you wouldn't do. They decide to become nurses and give something back. Now, according to the Royal College of Nursing, they have had a 14% pay cut since 2010. And we now get stories again from the RCN of lots of ordinary nurses by the end of the week having to use food banks because they can't afford to pay for food. That is not the kind of country that you want to run, is it?
I want a country that works for everyone, not just the privileged few. If we look at what happens, well, if we look at what is happening in relation to pay within the National Health Service, in fact, when you look at basic pay together with progression pay, actually for around half of NHS staff, they have annual increase of around, on average, 3% rather than just the 1% basic pay. But I come back to the key question, which is, we have, and if you look at the National Health Service and funding in the National Health Service, we're putting £10 billion extra into it.
I'm sorry, Prime Minister, but we have nurses going to food banks at the moment. That must be wrong.
We have, and there are many complex reasons why people go to food banks. And I want to develop an economy where, yes, we have a strong economy so that we can pay for the public services that people need, but also we have an economy where we're creating secure jobs and well-paid jobs and higher-paid jobs for people. Well, but you're only going to do that if you've got...
They haven't got enough money to eat at the moment. But under the Conservatives, under your government, the record number of food parcels last year has been handed out, according to the Dressel Trust. 1.2 million food parcels in this country. You said that on number 10 doorstep that you were going to be out there for the ordinary working people. Those are people who are really suffering. And I've asked you, under your government, if people vote Conservative again, is that going to carry on? And the answer seems to be yes.
No, I haven't said that, Andrew. What I have said is that if I'm elected as Prime Minister, if a Conservative government is elected, what we will be doing is working to create a strong economy in this country, an economy which ensures that we're creating secure and higher paid jobs for people.
About the whole of the country, and again about working families, there are lots of benefit cuts in the pipeline. If they were introduced now, then 3 million households in this country would be on average £2,500 worse off. Again, if they vote Conservative, that is what is going to happen.
We have made changes to welfare as a Conservative government, and there's a reason for doing that, which is we want to ensure that, of course, there is a welfare system that gives people support when they need that support, but I also want to see a welfare system that is helping to encourage and see people getting into the workplace. I think work is the best route out of poverty. And as we look at how we do that...
These are working families I'm discussing.
As we
include an opportunity to properly fund schools, because in England, primary schools are facing a £3 billion cut by 2020. And lots of parents watching this programme are well aware that parents are having to come in and fill in for classes where there aren't enough teachers to be provided for. There are raffle sales for books. Education in England in particular is badly underfunded. And I ask you again, is there any prospect of change if people vote for Theresa May as Prime Minister?
Let's look at actually what is happening in education. We said that we will protect the core schools budget, and we have done that. In fact, the level of funding
is falling.
In fact, the level of funding going into schools is at record levels. It's something like £41 billion this year. What we're also looking at, yes, and as the number of pupils increases, the number of the money going into schools increases.
But what we're also funding is falling, and is going to carry on falling until 2020.
We have protected that core schools budget, but what we are also looking at is introducing a greater degree of fairness in the way in which schools are funded. Everybody across the political spectrum has accepted that the current way that we allocate funding to schools is unfair. We want to bring in a much fairer system of funding for schools. We've made some proposals, we've consulted on them, and obviously we'll be responding with our final proposals in due course.
You don't accept my figures, Prime Minister. Here's the National Audit Office. Mainstream schools have to make £3 billion in efficiency savings, that's cuts, by 2019-20 against a background of growing pupil numbers and a real term reduction in funding per pupil. And I say to you again, surely you have to rethink what's going on in schools. All right, is the triple lock on pensions still safe?
Under a Conservative government, the state pension will still go up every year of the next Parliament. Exactly how we calculate that increase will be for the manifesto, and as I've just said, you'll have to wait for the manifesto to see what's in it.
Let's turn to l'éléphant dans la chambre, Brexit. You said in your Lancaster House speech that no deal was better than a bad deal. Do you stand by that?
Yes, I do. I think it's important, but I also think it's important that we go in there with the strength of hand in negotiations to get the good deal for the British people. That's what I want to do. And that's why I say that every vote for me and my team on June the 8th will strengthen my hand in those negotiations.
Because you've now had a private conversation with Mr. Juncker and the rest of the team, and it doesn't seem to have gone terribly well, because Jean-Claude Juncker said apparently to Angela Merkel after meeting you, "It went very badly. She is in a different galaxy. Based on that meeting, no deal is much more likely than finding agreement." Was it that bad a meeting?
No, look, I'm not in a different galaxy, but I think what this shows, and what some of the other comments we've seen coming from European leaders shows, is that there are going to be times when these negotiations are going to be tough. And that's why you need strong and stable leadership.
Let's move on to some of the other issues. You mentioned EU citizens. Now, if I was somebody watching this programme, and perhaps I was married to a French or German citizen, I'd be very, very worried about their status and my children's status in the future. Jeremy Corbyn has said that if I become Prime Minister on day one, I guarantee their status. Why can't you do the same?
I believe that as the United Kingdom Prime Minister, it's important that I have a care for UK citizens who are currently living in the 27 countries, remaining countries of the European Union. That's why I say I think this is about reciprocity. I think it is about us. I want to be able to guarantee EU citizens living here their rights and their status, but I think it's important that we ensure that UK citizens living in Europe have their rights and status guaranteed as well. There is goodwill there. If you look at my... Sorry, Andrew, I think this is an important point. If you look at my Article 50 letter, which triggered the letter that triggered Article 50, I was very clear that I believe the rights of EU citizens here and UK citizens in Europe should be an early discussion, should be an early point of agreement for us. And if you look at the guidelines, that's exactly what the EU has, the 27 have agreed as well. There's goodwill there. I believe we can give that reassurance to people at an early stage.
Do you think the richest people in this country, people perhaps in houses worth more than £5 million, are paying their fair share of taxes? Should they be asked to pay more, given that we've got a tough time still ahead of us?
If you look at what has happened in terms of tax, the top 1% of people paying tax are actually paying a higher burden, a higher share of tax than under a Conservative government than they did in any year under a Labour government.
But going ahead?
I think that it is right that we ensure that the tax system is balanced. As I've been clear, it would be my intention to reduce taxes on working families. I think you can see. I think you can see from the fact. Well, let's look and see what we've done as in relation to tax.
Let's not go back into history. We haven't got time for history.
Well, I think our record is important in this tax issue. We've taken 4 million people out of paying income tax, and 30 million people have seen a tax cut, which to a basic rate payer is worth about £1,000 a year.
I've just been having a conversation with Tim Farron about his attitude to gay sex. You're also a Christian. Do you think that gay sex is a sin?
No.
And do you think that looking at what happened to Tim Farron, I know he's a rival leader and all of that, that there is an aggressively judgmental mood being imposed on Christians in this country that other groups don't have to face?
Yeah. I think that obviously if anybody who is a leader of a political party, who is putting themselves up for election, who is asking the public to trust them, is bound to get a whole range of questions from a whole range of different groups.
Some people think the reason that you called this election is that 30 Conservative candidates and or agents are under investigation by the Crown Prosecution Service, could be facing charges quite soon. Can I ask if that issue was discussed at all when you were discussing the election?
That is not the reason why this election has been called. And let's be clear, in relation to the Electoral Commission issue, local spending was properly declared. The Conservative Party did make an administrative error on its national spending. As did other parties. We have paid our fine. I would expect other parties to do so.
If people are facing CPS action, should they be able to stand?
Well, the CPS is an independent body which will make decisions about whether or not it takes actions on individuals.
Okay.
What I'm very clear about in this election is that this election is about the national interest. It is about the future of our country. And that's why I say to people, I want to see everybody voting.
And you have raised again and again the question of Jeremy Corbyn. Can I put it to you that when it came to one of the most important votes that we've had in recent times on the Iraq war, whatever you think of Jeremy Corbyn, he was on the right side looking at history and you were on the wrong side. You went into the voting lobbies behind Tony Blair and voted for the Iraq war, which had so many disastrous consequences. And he did the unpopular thing and stood out against it. On that, at least, he was right and you were wrong.
If we look at this choice at this election, the choice people will be making is who do they want to see as Prime Minister? Who do they want to see leading those Brexit negotiations? Who do they want to see defending this country? What Jeremy Corbyn has shown is that he's not prepared to stand up for the defence of this country. His economic policies simply don't add up.
If you knew then what you knew now, would you still vote for the Iraq? Would you still have voted for the Iraq war?
Well, that's a hypothetical, Andrew. You can only vote at any point in time on what you know.
Do you regret voting for it?
On what I voted in the way that I thought was right. When that vote came into Parliament.
But he was right on that and you were wrong, isn't that the truth?
No. I voted in the way that I believed was right when the vote came to Parliament. If we look ahead, there will be tough decisions to be taken. I think it's important that we have in number 10 a Prime Minister willing to defend this country, to stand up for the defence of this country. Jeremy Corbyn has shown he's not willing to do that with economic policies that will take this country forward.
Prime Minister, thank you very much indeed. We've covered a lot.